Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Actor, Actress, Director Showcase. My name's Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. And today we're talking about three actors and directors, because I guess some of them actually do both in a way, that we're all real big fans of. And that is Brad Pitt, Carla Gugino, and Taika Waititi. If you had asked me this question probably maybe even 5 years ago, we probably wouldn't be talking about Taika really at all. Would you agree with that?
5 years ago?
Yeah, well, I mean, 5 years ago he had just done Thor Ragnarok, but
yeah, I guess so, yeah.
would we have been talking about Taika 5 years ago?
No, I don't think so. No,
I don't think so either.
No.
I mean, the last 5 years has been very, very Taika heavy, which I'm not saying is a bad thing at all. But 5 years ago, we probably would not have talked about Taika Waititi on the show, but we definitely would be talking about Brad Pitt. And Carla Gugino, you and I have always been like...
We'll always talk about her.
Yeah, we love talking about Carla Gugino.
But we'll get to that.
We'll definitely get that. We're going to start with Taika, since last week we got Thor Love and Thunder that came out, which, if you want to hear about our thoughts about that film, we did a spoiler review and a non-spoiler review, and that's on the channel, so feel free to check those out. But we're talking about Taika Waititi as a whole. Now, he's one of those directors that definitely does acting and directing, and he has done, obviously, acting outside of his directorial films, but he's definitely one of those actors, not like M. Night Shyamalan, where he throws himself into a scene. Usually, if Taika is directing, he's going to have at least, outside of, I think, Hunt for the Wilder People, like an actual, scene, like an actual character in his movies. And this is definitely a character, or a different character. This is definitely a director that, like I said, outside of 5 years ago, before Thor Ragnarok, I only really knew Taika as the guy from What We Do in the Shadows, which at that time, me and my director brain, I didn't know he directed it. I was just like, oh, that's the guy from What We Do in the Shadows. Because I really didn't remember him from Green Lantern, and who does? Does anyone ever really remember Green Lantern outside of that Ryan Reynolds was in it and the movie was bad? I don't think anyone ever really does. But it wasn't until Thor Ragnarok came out that I think everyone started to go, oh yeah, this guy actually does a lot of indie films. He's really funny. He does all these kind of weird, you got to have to kind of get his humor, but he's a very enjoyable guy. And then since Ragnarok, like I said, he's popping up everywhere. He, followed up with Ragnarok with the Oscar-nominated Jojo Rabbit, and then he obviously does TV, and he's been everywhere in the last 5 years. But what are your thoughts on Taika?
Well, kind of the same thing. It's like, I had never heard of him before What We Do in the Shadows, as most people hadn't. Let's be honest. Now, I think it was when he was first announced as a director for Thor Ragnarok was when I kind of thought, well, I want to see what this guy's about. And like you, I think I had seen What We Do in the Shadows. I've never been as huge a fan as some people are of that, but I enjoy the movie. But I'm not
just so much a fan. The movie's fine. I love the TV show, which he directed, I think, 3 episodes, and he does pop up, I think, in 1 episode of it. But I love the TV series. The movie is good. It's good, but it's like if they had not came up with the TV series, What We Do in the Shadows, I would have forgotten What We Do in the Shadows.
But it definitely gives you a clue to like his brand of humor and his personality. And so, of course, when they announced him as the director of Ragnarok, I did go back and I watched Hunt for the Wilder People at that point because I kind of wanted to see something else he had done. I did not watch Boy until I think last year or the year before I watched for the first time. And Eel versus Shark he'd done before that, which that's another one I didn't watch until this year. But yeah, before Thor Ragnarok, I hadn't really heard of him beyond, oh yeah, he's that one guy from What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when they did announce that he was going to be Thor Ragnarok, I was like, I don't know who the hell that person is. And I was like, oh my God, Taika Waititi's amazing. This movie's going to be funny. I was like, what's he done? I looked back on his stuff and I recognized, What We Do in the Shadows. I was like, oh, okay. And then everything else, I was like,
well, that's the thing is,
I don't know any of this stuff.
Until then, Thor hadn't been funny. Yes, he had the whole fish out of water kind of feel to it, when he was on Earth and he didn't know the customs and things like that. But it was not like, a comedic character. So that's why when they announced him as the director, you're like, what's that going to be like? Can Taika do a serious movie? And the answer to that is no. But
at that point,
right? No, but even now, he's never done a completely serious movie. Everything he does has elements of comedy in it, and he can mix them well. It's not always 100% success, but he is capable of having serious material and comedic material in the same film.
Yeah.
But going into that, I mean, because now you think of Thor, you look at Thor Ragnarok, and now with Thor Love and Thunder, you know what to expect. But back then, people had no idea where he was taking Thor.
Yeah, because I think, and you and I are in the same boat because we both kind of agreed with this. I can't remember what show we were talking about this on. I don't believe it was the spoiler review, but yeah, Thor, the first film, Thor, it's fine, but it was just kind of like I don't want to call it a bottle movie because you have Asgard and you have like that place was it New Mexico or was it Arizona? It's one of them.
New Mexico, I want to say.
I think it's Mexico or New Mexico.
Yeah.
And it's you have like two locations, boom, that's it. And it's not necessarily funny. It was more Tom Hiddleston's funny as Loki. And then you had your Dark World.
Well, even in that one, Loki was not comedic really in the first Thor.
No, it's just that he was an awesome bad guy at that point. Then you had Dark World. It was kind of the same thing. It wasn't until Avengers where Joss Whedon came in. We're like, oh, it's because we were talking about Hemsworth in last month's episode. That's what we were talking about. They're like, oh, Hemsworth actually can be funny with Thor. And then they brought Taika on. You're like, okay, let's see where we're going. Now, like I said, we've aired out our Thor Ragnarok stuff where it's like, do we agree with some of the choices Taika made in the film? Absolutely not. But he did do something that outside of the Avengers they hadn't been able to do in the MCU is they made Thor fun. That when Thor does pop up, you're like, okay, at least I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy what we do. It might not mesh with the story the way it should, but at least we know Hemsworth's going to come in and have some funny lines. He's going to be an enjoyable part of the film. And that's what Ragnarok did do. Same thing with Ruffalo as Hulk. He made him fun. And then, of course, Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. And then, he put himself a little bit in there too much as Korg? Yes, Korg does have some funny lines. He does. But the problem is that too much Korg is a bad thing. But after Ragnarok, I mean, Taika was all over the place. You saw him. Oh yeah, he does TV. He does all this kind of stuff. But when he came out with Jojo Rabbit, I think that was what put Taika kind of in the stratosphere. Now, MCU got his name out there for everybody to recognize, and then like I said, everyone loved Ragnarok or hated Ragnarok. And then Jojo Rabbit was like, okay, he's gonna play Hitler. How's this gonna work? And I remember, like, for me, I had zero interest in seeing Jojo Rabbit because I don't like watching Nazi stuff. That's why I still haven't seen Schindler's List. But I was kind of intrigued because I knew that he was making fun of Hitler and he was making fun of the Nazis and stuff like that. And so I checked it out and I fucking loved this movie. And like we said, him not doing a straight up serious film, I think in this movie he balances it beautifully. Whereas like in Ragnarok, he was too much comedy, not enough drama. In JoJo, I think it balanced itself perfectly. Like when we has the serious moments, they're gut punching moments. Like you are going to feel what happens to these characters throughout the film, but then he livens it up with the comedy and some of the lines in the movie, and it's a fantastic film. It was one of my favorite films of that year. And then when Thor: Love and Thunder came out, you and I were both in that situation where we're like, we know where the storyline's going to go, especially with one particular character, in this case Jane, and we're like, we'll see how he balances it. And you and I were both in agreement. I think he balanced the Jane story really well with it. And to the point where I think everyone, for the most part, really likes Taika. Now, obviously, Thor: Love and Thunder has been a very divisive film so far. But you and I are both in agreement. Like, it's not a perfect film by any means. It's got its issues, but we enjoyed it for the most part.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, and then you throw his acting in there. He did, I think he directed one episode of The Mandalorian, but even his character in Mandalorian, I think was fun. He had that small cameo in the Suicide Squad, which even that he had like 2 scenes in it, but in those 2 scenes, Taika does a lot.
And it wasn't even a comedic scene. They were
it was a dramatic scene for him, and that scene, especially at the very, very end of the movie, did so amazingly to elevate the Ratcatcher 2's character. And then, of course, I loved his performance in this. Not everyone did, but I loved him as in Free Guy. He was great to me. I loved everything about him in Free Guy. And then, of course, he was also in this year's Lightyear, which I think in Lightyear, to me, he was a little too Taika.
In Lightyear, it's like, okay, he's just playing the same character he's always doing.
He's just basically Taika Waititi in this movie. But I've heard good things about his show. Was it Our Flags Means Death? I haven't seen it, but I've heard decent things about it. But yeah, Taika is himself, like, if you can get his humor and you can find his humor enjoyable, then I think you're going to enjoy Taika Waititi. Like I said, the first time I ever noticed Taika was once again in What We Do in the Shadows, but I didn't notice him as a director. I noticed him as the vampire in the film. So that was my first thing. Was that your first? Was also What We Do in the Shadows?
I believe so. Yeah, I don't think I'd seen anything before that. It was just that, and then, like I said, before Thor came out, I started trying to check out a couple of his older things. But yeah, that was my first exposure to him.
Did he? Like I said, and because like no one remembers the movie, was he even comedic relief in Green Lantern, or was he kind of the straight man in that movie?
He had some. He was like the roommate or the best friend or whatever.
The buddy, but I don't think he
was like kind of like any character like that. I'm sure they have some funny lines, but he wasn't like an over the top comedic character or anything.
Yeah, like I think he was more
typical Taika.
Man. What's that?
He wasn't typical Taika.
Yeah, I think he was just a straight man to Ryan Reynolds in that film.
Part, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, what he has, what does he have anything currently planned coming up?
Yeah, there's a movie called Next Goal Wins coming out, which it's about Michael Fassbender plays a coach who's trying to turn an American Samoa soccer team into like champions. So it's kind of, I feel like it's his most straightforward, like not necessarily a drama, because I'm sure there's comedic moments to it, but I think it's not really going to be a comedy. Unless they make it like, Cool Runnings where it's completely comedy, who knows. But there's that, and then he's got nothing else planned until whatever he's doing for Star Wars.
Well, it looks like he also has Tower of Terror, which we know is the Disney ride. So I don't know.
That's one of those that's been like announced but not even being worked on
yet. It's
yet.
Pre-production. I mean that's more than what the Star Wars movie is, which is just announced. But yes, Taika's going to do a Star Wars film. Who knows what that movie's going to be? Honestly, find his wheelhouse. Do a droids film. Do a droids film with Taika. I think it would work. He's not going to do that, but I think that would work really, really well.
He can even play IG-11 again.
Exactly. He could play one of those characters. You give him a droids film. I think that would work immensely for Taika's like a comedy. And then, of course, they announced Akira, which I think isn't that the Japanese anime film, Akira?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I don't even know if he's still. That's one of those movies that had so many directors on and off it over the last like 10, 15 years that who knows if he's still even attached to that.
Yeah. Because like I say, it's at the very, very top of his director thing on IMDb. But I mean, there's not really much more else to talk about when it comes to Taika because he's still so very new in a way.
Apparently also doing Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which is like the sequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So
I did not see that on the list. So
I'm on Letterboxd. I think you're on IMDb, so we got two different things here.
Yeah, that's true. Like they don't have anything
list Akira, so who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of Taika, though, like I said, not that there's a big thing to choose from. I mean, we got 6 movies, so we're only picking like half his stuff. What 3 films would you pick for people to watch?
Well, I think you gotta go with Jojo Rabbit. You gotta go with Jojo Rabbit because I mean, obviously, it's an Oscar-nominated film. It's his most, without being like the blockbuster superhero movie film. It's his biggest real film. It's got the best cast to it. I think it's the most rounded and well developed because a lot of his other ones are more like little indie films kind of things. And I think it just shows what he's capable of, in terms of real filmmaking. And like you said, he balances the comedy and the drama very well. My second choice would be Thor Ragnarok. I debated which Thor to choose, honestly. But I think Thor Ragnarok, while personally I feel that Love and Thunder did a better job of balancing the comedy with the drama, although I'm in the minority in that opinion, apparently. I think that Thor Ragnarok is kind of the one that introduced most of the world to Taika Waititi and his directing style and his comedic, his tone, his style of comedy. And like you said, it kind of reinvented Thor. And so I picked that one. And my third one I'm actually going to pick is the movie Boy. Boy is a much smaller movie. I think it was the second movie he made, I think. And that's actually is about basically this little boy growing up in is it Samoa? No, it's New Zealand. Sorry, New Zealand, where he's from. And from what I understand, it's not necessarily like an autobiography, but it's definitely a very personal story. It's kind of telling about kind of the people he knew and the type of town he lived in, all this kind of thing. And it's like a real father and son kind of tale. And it's an excellent movie, and I would recommend it if you haven't seen it.
So we've got 2 out of the 3. Obviously Jojo Rabbit.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my favorite film of his. I love his performance as Hitler. Actually made it enjoyable at points, but I never thought I'd ever say that I enjoyed Hitler in a movie, but I did in Jojo Rabbit. I love the entire cast. Scarlett Johansson's fantastic. Sam Rockwell, Thomasin McKenzie. I'm blanking on the 2 boys' names.
Oh, the
But
actors' names? I don't know offhand. But...
Yeah, I'm blanking on the actors' names. But JoJo and his best friend, I love their characters. Even Rebel Wilson is funny in the movie. You know how I feel about Rebel Wilson. I love the heart in that film. And when, like I said, when it hits you with the dramatic moments, like the one moment I think we all know about, it rips your heart out. And I loved that film. I watched it a couple weeks back, and I just remember it's like, God, I love this movie so much. And I was kind of in the same boat as you. Which Thor movie do I pick? Because I prefer Thor: Love and Thunder as well, and I have a blast with it. But like I said, I'm also going to go Ragnarok because I think Ragnarok, like I said, it does put Taika on the map. I think we get more of a, while we do complain that there's a little too much Korg in that movie, I think he gets a better job of with Korg in that film. And then, like I said, you have the moments with Ruffalo, you have some great Loki moments with Thor, and Blanchett's a great Hela in the film. As like I said, we both enjoyed the other one more, but I think Thor Ragnarok is the one, like Lee said, put him on the map. And then it comes down to my third one. And while I do love What We Do in the Shadows, I love the TV series more than the movie. And while the movie is enjoyable, I don't think it's going to be a movie that everyone is going to enjoy. So if I'm going to pick a third film for everyone to be introduced to Taika, I'm actually going to pick Hunt for the Wilderpeople because it's a very simple story. Whereas with What We Do in the Shadows, it's like you're either in with the humor of like The Office, but with vampires. And if you're not into that humor, then you're going to be dead in the water right away. Hunt for the Wilderpeople, it's like I said, simple story about a boy who basically gets adopted to these 2 older people. And Sam Neill is fantastic in it. And so is it Julius or Julian?
Julian Dennison.
Julian Dennison, who I am not necessarily a huge fan of, but I think he's actually great in the film. And it's a nice, tight little story about this adventure between these 2 characters. And Taika also, that's another reason why I kind of want to go with this one, is because Taika has like a scene in this movie. He's got one scene, and it's mainly him just being a director and directing the story. Whereas with Ragnarok and JoJo, he's got, big characters in this movie. And I want people to take notice of Taika, not as this actor-director, but as an actual director. Not outside of one scene in the movie, he's not in this thing. And so I would pick The Hunt for Wilderpeople because it is him actually directing this film. Like I said, I had never seen this movie until about a couple weeks back. So I had to watch a bunch of Taika movies for this episode and also for trivia. And this was a movie that I was like, at the beginning, I was like, okay, it is what it is. But then once it actually hit the main plot in stride, it's like, I actually really enjoyed this film. And so that was going to be my third movie overall. Next, we're going to go with, easily for me, one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood that not enough people either A, respect or give enough credit to, and that is Carla Gugino. Now, one thing that Brian and I both figured out while we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with Carla Gugino, Brian, what did we figure out while trying to figure out what we're going to do about the show?
That we haven't seen as many of the movies that we think we have, and even the ones I have seen, honestly, there's a lot of movies in her filmography I didn't even remember she was in, and there's several I haven't seen, and there's a lot I have seen, which I thought was just kind of eh. So I'm like, I'm not quite sure where she got into this legendary status in my mind, but
I think the thing is with Carla is when she's on screen, she commands the presence of everyone to take notice of her. She's awesome in everything she's in. She might not be in the best movies, or she might not be in movies that we remember, but we always remember Carla. And even TV, like I probably love her TV career more than her movie career, because as I was going through everything, I was like pulling up all her TV shows, and I was like, oh crap, I remember that show. Oh, I forgot. Yes, she was in this. And those things, like I was popping up in my brain more of her TV series or season or like a career more than her movie career, because her movie career, while she's in some good films. She doesn't have the biggest parts in those films. So picking our 3 for her is going to be really, really tough because like most of these movies, she's either a secondary character or she's got maybe a couple scenes in those films. But in those scenes, she's great. And she is one of my favorite performers out there in Hollywood. And she, like I said, she's done so much, but not stuff that maybe people necessarily take notice in. She's a great, I guess the term would be she's a great character actress because she just pops in, does her job, but she's not the focal point in most of the stuff. But when she is, she's great. And I think that's kind of the big problem. As we were going through all this, I was like, oh, wow. I'm trying to remember where I would say the first thing I noticed her from, which I know the first thing I noticed her from. But it's like there's just so much in her IMDb that I was like, wow, I maybe have only scratched like 20% of the surface of what Carla Gugino's done. Or I maybe have forgotten 15% of the stuff that she has done. I think you and I are probably going to be in the same boat on this. That the first time we noticed her was Son-in-Law.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what's funny is I saw her first performance. It was like Troop Beverly Hills. That movie played a lot in my house because like I had older sisters and my mom and stuff like that, and that movie played. And I hate that fucking movie so much. The boy in me hates that movie because I remember like hearing that stupid song. I don't remember her in the film. I'm assuming she's probably one of the Girl Scouts in the movie.
Well, that's what I was like looking through her early filmography. Like you said, most of it was TV, but I'm like, she appeared on episodes of like Who's the Boss and Alf and all these shows, and
it was like one episode.
I don't remember seeing her. But of course, at the time, I didn't know who she was. The Wonder Years she showed up on. She was on the feels like on everything in TV before she went into movies.
Yeah, I actually like wrote down whatever movies or whatever shows she was in. That she's in more than 3. I wrote down with most of these shows like Falcon Crest and stuff like I've the Buccaneers. I've never heard of. But Son-in-Law was the first movie I took notice of her. She's an actual main character in that movie. Now, granted, through the film, she does take a back seat to Pauly Shore and blanking on her dad, the actor.
Oh, it's Lane something.
I'll pull it up here real quick. But like
Lane Smith.
Yeah. What's that?
Lane Smith is the father.
Lane Smith. But I mean, when she popped up, I mean, amazing. Now, granted, halfway through the film, she changes her hair, and I wasn't a fan of her hair change. But that was the movie that I first took notice her, and Brian as well. And I loved her in that film. I mean,
that movie when I first, because I mean, I saw Encino Man, of course, and I loved Encino Man.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we went and saw Son-in-Law, and like you said, the rest. This is one of those movies. The rest of the cast is just there to play the straight man, to Pauly Shore doing his thing.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies. Is it a dumb movie? Yeah, but it's actually also very funny. I enjoy the movie, but that's a movie where you took notice of her. I mean, not just because of the way she looked, but she was a lot of fun. I really liked her in this. I watched this
really
movie
well
just
with Pauly.
From 93 to through the end of the 90s. I had to watch this movie. I won't even try and count so many times. My friend and I watched this movie.
Yeah, like not to just completely turn this into the Pauly Shore show, but like there's good Pauly Shore movies. Pauly Shore's never had a great.
Well, there's like 2, but yeah.
What's that?
There's like 2 good movies.
I liked In the Army Now, and Biodome's got its own special little place. But Son-in-Law, and I also like Jury Duty a little bit, but because of Taya Carrera. Carrera. I never say her name right. I like Pauly Shore. But Son-in-Law, to me, I think is the best well-rounded outside of Encino Man. And I think it's because of that cast. I think that family dynamic, and then also Carla in the film, I think works. I can never hear John Denver's I Want to Be a Country Boy and not think
Thank God
of Son-in-Law.
Yep.
That is, like I said, you hear a movie or you hear songs. That's how I do. I was like, I don't remember. I'm not, like, I love music. Everyone loves music. Everyone's just, I hate music. It's like, you're a fucking idiot. But for me, I don't go, oh, that's John Denver's 19, blah, 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 blah. I Want to Be a Country Boy. No, I hear a song.
That was in that movie, in that scene.
Exactly. Let's go, oh, that's from that movie in this scene. And that's how I remember that's how I remember music is, oh, that song was in Top Gun at this scene, or that movie was in this movie doing this. And I Want to Be a Country Boy is always Pauly Shore riding the cornfield, doing all that. And I will never forget that moment. And like I said, Carla, to me, always obviously connects with that film. Now, outside of that, we get a lot of other films in between. Now, I think a movie franchise that she became really big off of was probably Spy Kids, because she's in all three. She plays one of them. Isn't she the parent?
She's the mom. Yeah.
She's the mom. I have never seen a single fucking one of those films.
I saw them all, and until I looked up her IMDb, I forgot she was in them because I mean, I haven't seen them in years. I only saw them because of my kids. But it's like I forgot she was
never into those movies, so I never watched them. But one movie, or not even movie, one show though that I do remember her in was Spin City with Michael J. Fox, and that show is so good. I don't know why people don't talk about Spin City.
It was good while Michael J. Fox was on it.
Yes, once it went to Charlie Sheen and like Heather Locklear, it kind of fell apart. But yes, with the Michael J. Fox with Alan Ruck and that show's so damn funny. It's still funny to this day for me. But she was on there for a little bit because she played his girlfriend on the show, and she was great. She perfectly meshed with Michael and everything. You know, she was also in like Snake Eyes, and I'm assuming the Michael is the John Travolta Michael.
That's John Travolta.
Yeah, I was like. She also did like at least 20 some episodes of Chicago Hope, which everyone forgets that Chicago Hope existed because it came out like the same year as ER. But I watched both those shows, and I remember her on that. But it was Spy Kids, I think, in terms of movies that people kind of really went and took notice of her. For me, the next big film that I really knew Carlo from was Sin City, which, like I said, she's got maybe 2-3 scenes in the movie, but I loved her in those 2-3 scenes. I'm not talking about, yes, obviously, but even then, I enjoyed the hell out of her with Mickey Rourke. I think their dynamic in that, like, I wanted to see more of those two. Obviously, we couldn't because it's like, it's different stories all meshed together. But it was one of those things where if they ever did like do more with Marv, I would only be into it if it was her character with Marv through all of that. And I loved her performance in that. Shockingly, I don't remember her in Night at the Museum.
Nor do I.
She's apparently in it, but I don't remember her in the film. You go ahead with some more stuff because
so the first place I noticed her was Son-in-Law. After that, I mean, like you said, she's in a whole lot of stuff that like I don't even remember her being in, but I saw a bunch of these movies. The next one I actually recognized her, knew her from was Snake Eyes, which I actually really enjoy. Snake Eyes. I'm a sucker for real time. I've never seen Snake Eyes. I'm a sucker for real time movies. Like 2 hours takes place. It's 2 hours takes place within 2 hours, so it's one of those kind of thrillers where it's taking place in real time, and it's a Brian De Palma film. It's kind of a mystery thriller kind of thing. And it's actually a very good movie. I enjoy that very much, and she was very good in it. Forgot she was in the Spy Kids movies. I will say, as far as TV, she's one of those actresses who did a bunch of TV shows that like never lasted more than like half a season or maybe a season. Yeah. Like we were talking about Paula Marshall one time, me and you. She does the same thing. But Carly, the two that I always remember from on TV, one was called Threshold, which was one of a glut of shows that came out in the wake of X-Files becoming a big hit.
I want to see if the second show is
the second one is Karen Sisco.
Karen Sisco, yes.
Where she basically played Jennifer Lopez's role from Out of Sight. They made a series based on Karen Sisco, and I really enjoyed that show. But of course, it didn't last very long because, God forbid, I have a show that stays on.
Didn't she get a season of Karen Sisco?
It didn't get more than a season. I mean, it might have finished a season. It had 10 episodes.
Yeah, another show that I loved her in. Well, that's further down the road. We'll get to that. She also popped up on Entourage a few times as well.
Oh yeah, and Entourage is very good as well.
I love
as far as movies, like you said, Sin City obviously is a lot of people love the movie. I'm not a big fan of Sin City, but again, a lot of these movies I either didn't even remember she was in, or things like Sin City where I know she's in it. I'm not a fan of the movie, but I like her in it. Like I said, she commands a presence. She's always good in anything she's in.
Like so you got American Gangster, Righteous Kill, Watchmen. I
can't stand Watchmen, but I like her in it.
Yeah, I wish she was in the movie more than what we got. Like that was probably one of the things that made me want to see Watchmen was that she was in it and Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in it, and they're both barely in the fucking film.
And then she started her Dwayne Johnson trilogy.
Yeah, Race to Witch Mountain,
Faster, and San Andreas.
Exactly. So she got that. I think is where a lot of people maybe got eyes on her. Just because everyone goes to see The Rock, so that's where people started to take notice of her. Well, you and I have been fans of her for years at that point. Yeah, she was also in Sucker Punch, Californication. I never saw the show, but everyone was on that damn show.
Everyone
was on it for a good while. Mr. Popper's Penguins with Jim Carrey. apparently she's in 3 DC films, but she's the voice of the ship.
She's the voice of the ship.
Which I'm like, I rarely pay attention to that crap. You know?
Yeah, but that was because of her Zack Snyder connection. He had her be the voice of the ship.
Yeah, and so like for me, like a lot of the stuff. Once again, we go back to TV. After Karen Cisco, Wayward Pines, I watched her in that. There's a show. I loved this show, and it got canceled after 1 season, but she was great in it, which was Roadies.
I didn't see that one. I don't know
It was on. Was it Star? It was either Stars or Showtime. But it's basically a show about roadies, and like they're following this one band. It was very kind of Almost Famous like, but it had like Imogene Poots or Potts or Poots. Is Poots? Yeah, it had Luke Wilson, Rafe Spall, Machine Gun Kelly, Ron White. I know those are 2 weird names.
Yeah, I've never seen this show.
Yeah, it was on Showtime. It had 10 episodes. I love the shit out of that show. It was such a great show, and it got canceled after 1 season. But for me, the one show that I think she deserved an Emmy for, she should have gotten one, but I don't think she even got nominated for the damn thing, was Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House is basically her joining. Well, it was before that. She kind of like with The Rock, Mike Flanagan. She did Gerald's Game, which is a great, I wouldn't say psychological horror, but it kind of is to a point. A horror film on Netflix. That it is a fantastic performance. That is 100% Carla. She is in every scene of that film. She is the driving force of that movie. I don't think there's a single scene where Carla's not in that movie. And she's great in that. And then she continued on with him with The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, which, Brian, you have not seen any of those.
No, I saw the first one, the first series, and I was kind of like, it's fine.
I love The Haunting of Hill House. Bly Manor goes a little more romantic, like romantic horror, or romantic ghost story, basically. But Haunting of Hill House, I think, was fantastic. And she is a staple of that show. And that was like, maybe just re-solidified my love for Carla Gugino in this.
Is House of Usher him too?
What's that?
Is The Fall of the House of Usher, is that another one from him?
That they're just, I think, finished wrapping that, and she's going to be in that as well. And she also had like, I think, a scene or an episode in Midnight Mass. So she is continued to be with Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan just loves working with the same people, which I'm fine with that because I love everyone that he works with. It's a shame she never didn't get to do Dr. Sleep though.
Yeah.
Great Dr. Sleep. And then of course last year she was also in Gunpowder Milkshake, which I loved that film. Like I said, she kind of plays like this like quiet librarian kind of character, but she's just a badass in the film, and she gets her badass moments. But yeah, I love Carla's TV career. I think she pops up in so many things that we all like enjoyed or forgot that she was in, but she was great in them. But her movie career, I think she has a solid career, but it could be better. I think there's a lot more people out there that should give her chances and opportunities. Now, granted, I mean, she looks amazing for her age, but I think now age is probably going to be her battle because I don't think people are going to give her the roles that she probably should get because there are younger actresses that would play.
Yeah, I don't think she's ever going to be that A-list box office kind of star, but she's one of those people that I think that a lot of people don't probably know her name, but they just know her, they recognize her, they see her, they enjoy her. She's a great actress, but I don't think she's ever going to be like the box office, star kind of thing.
Yeah, I think she's one of those, and we always say this for male actors, is like, oh, it's that guy from that one thing. I've seen this guy everywhere, but I don't know his name. And Carla's, I guess, the actress efficiency of that, where it's like everyone knows who Carla is. They might not know her name, but you show a picture of her, everyone goes, oh, the girl from San Andreas, or the girl from Witch Mountain, or the girl from Haunting of Hill House. Everyone knows who she is. They just might not know her name. Whereas Brian and I, we respect that. We respect the shit out of Carla Gugino. Now, in terms of picking her top 3, it's kind of hard. It's really hard. And it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of want to pick her TV stuff. Like if I'm going to show Carla Gugino someone, I kind of want to pick like TV. But our rules are our movies. And sadly, I I don't love a lot of my choices for the movies. I mean, obviously, Son-in-Law is definitely going to be it because that's an introduction to her, and it's what made you and I take notice of her, and we still look back on her performance in that fondly. Next would be Gerald's Game because that movie is
I
100%.
was gonna say, when you were going through Mike Flanagan stuff, you didn't even mention that, and that's her best thing she's done with him.
She's great in Hill House, though. But Gerald's Game is 100%. I mentioned Gerald's Game.
I didn't hear it. Sorry.
I said before Hill House, she was in Gerald's Game, where she's 100% in the movie.
Okay.
Brian just doesn't want.
I must have been looking something up at the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Gerald's Game. Like I said, if you love her and you want to see her basically command the performance, Gerald's Game is a must watch for her. In terms of a third film, without having to go TV, because if I went TV, I'd say Haunting of Hill House. But if I have to go with a movie, and like I said, this is just because she's in things, but she's not in a lot of the movies that she's in. As much as I want to say Sin City, I'm not going to go with Sin City because she's in like maybe 5 minutes of total screen time in that movie. So I got to go Gunpowder Milkshake just because she's in that at least more, and she has dramatic moments. She's got action awesome moments, and I actually really loved her character in that film. Not necessarily what I would have chose. I would have probably said Haunting of Hill House as a third, but we're not doing TV. But that would be my choices. Now, Brian, what would your choices be?
Well, I had two that were definite, and then the third one I had trouble trying to figure out what I wanted to pick. And those first two were Son-in-Law and Gerald's Game, because Son-in-Law being, like I said, the first time you really met her, it kind of just introduced the world to her. It kind of shows off her personality, things like that. Gerald's Game, I think, is her best lead performance. She's done a lot of like independent films, which supposedly she's really good in, but a lot of those I either haven't seen or some I know I've seen but don't really remember. But Gerald's Game, she's amazing in, so I definitely would give that one. My third one, I'm actually going to go with Snake Eyes. I think that she did a great job. It was just a supporting role, but it was like an important, pivotal supporting role, and she was still in a large chunk of the movie. And even though she's obviously done a ton of stuff since the 90s, I still picked two of my things from the 90s because those were some of her best roles.
And last but not least, we're going to go with the guy that we are so excited to see here in the next couple of weeks in Bullet Train, and that is Mr. Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, he's been around longer than I thought because, I mean, he did TV and stuff at first. But, I mean, we had the Sexiest Man of the Year phase where he was just, like I said, we did with the whole, like, Leo and Channing Tatum, where it's like, oh my god, the girls are just drooling over him. And then every movie that came out, we're like, oh my god, it's another Brad Pitt film. But then Brad Pitt got Badass, and we kind of came like, okay, Brad Pitt's actually really fucking cool. And now he's a staple in Hollywood. When Brad Pitt comes out with a movie, for the most part, unless it's like a quick indie film or something like that, which he doesn't necessarily normally do, but Brad Pitt has become a staple of Hollywood. You see Brad Pitt films. You want to see Brad Pitt, whether it's a drama, action, or in the way you and I say, when Brad Pitt's just having fun. Because when Brad Pitt has fun, you're going to have fun. Brad Pitt is a fun, great actor who knows that it's okay to be funny. That it's okay to make fun of yourself, like those others that we've mentioned before. And I think for the most part, he kind of always did it, but there was just certain movies where it just maybe they didn't capitalize on it. But he was funny from the get-go. More than just being the pretty face, he was funny from the start. Let's go with you, because I know you've probably seen a lot more of his stuff than I have. When was the first time that you recognized Brad?
Well, he's another one of those actors. I mean, like most of them, it's like I had seen him in things before I knew who he was. Going back, I'm like, oh, I saw Less Than Zero, and I saw some of these movies that No Way Out with Kevin Costner, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know he had a bit part in these kind of movies. Thelma and Louise is kind of the one where he broke out, even though he was just in basically one scene. It was like this scene that women all over the world were like, oh my gosh, who's this guy? That's right. That
was the thirst trap.
Yeah, that was the thirst trap, and that's kind of introduced the world to Brad Pitt. And I saw that, but I didn't think anything was an actor. I'm like, oh, look, they got some pretty boy like model or something to go be, her one night stand, whatever it was. And then for the next couple of years after that, he was doing, Cool World, River Runs Through It, California, even True Romance. So I mean, I think by this point I knew his name because I'd seen him, being starring in a movie like River Runs Through It, things like that. True Romance, I knew who he was. and it's a great movie, and I love that movie so much. And his part in it is one of the funnest parts of the movie. But again, I'm not really taking notice of Brad Pitt, the actor, at this point. Then that's when he hit the peak pretty boy phase. Was the 1994 with Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall. He has long flowy hair and he's pretty boy. I remember working in a video store and having two girls grab the standee of full size standee of Brad Pitt and just run. They just stole it and ran in broad daylight because they wanted to have this thing at home. And while both of those are actually very good movies, like you said, that was that point where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of hearing about Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
But that's where I first took notice of him, was kind of that Interview with the Vampire, Legend of the Fall year, because it's kind of the year everybody took notice of him. But as far as an actor and his real ability as an actor, it was the next year in Seven. Seven's one where it's like, okay, another Brad Pitt movie, whatever. But it was like you watch it and it's just like this dirty, grimy crime thriller mystery thing, which, all the anybody who only liked Brad Pitt like for his looks is like, what am I watching? I don't want to watch this kind of junk. But whereas the rest of us like,
he was basically playing the whole most of the movie like with a broken nose and shit.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I love that he's taking this turn and taking acting seriously. And obviously he found in David Fincher somebody who could really, stretch him and help him become an even better actor. And especially in some of the final scenes in that movie where he just like shows so many different emotions on his face. In that last scene where it's like anger and sorrow at the same time, and you kind of see just go back and forth between it. I think that was probably one of my favorite acting performances of his. And then the next year,
we'll forever never not hear What's in the Box.
Yeah, What's in the Box?
What's in the box?
But then the next year with 12 Monkeys, I think that's when he like almost intentionally was like, he didn't want to be in the pretty boy, the pretty boy actor. He like chopped his hair, put in a weird, contact, make his eye look off. He starts acting crazy. It's a Terry Gilliam film, so of course it's gonna be weird. But I like that he was like taking roles outside the box at that point. Now, for the few years after that, he kind of just went back to some more serious stuff. But at least at that point, we had seen a glimpse of Brad Pitt that could A, have fun, B, be a serious actor, and C, of course, he's still good looking. So
yeah, I'm kind of almost like in the same boat with you. I figured you probably would have maybe noticed him earlier, but I don't remember him in Thelma and Louise. Now, granted, I haven't seen Thelma and Louise since like the 90s, and obviously at my age, I didn't pay attention to the cowboy dude. It's one of those things like I can go back and see pictures. I'm like, oh, that was Brad Pitt. Okay, but that's not like my first introduction to him was Cool World, which as a kid that movie seemed really, really cool. Is it a good movie? No. But
it's R-rated Roger Rabbit. We got to check
exactly. It was an R-rated Roger Rabbit. I remember the girl in the white dress.
It's a horrible movie.
Oh, it's not good at all. But I remembered, who Brad Pitt was from that. And then, of course, I hadn't seen True Romance till a couple of years ago through trivia, stuff like that. And then of course I knew who Brad Pitt was then. Of course, Brad Pitt's great in the movie. But it wasn't until, like you said, 94 when and it was probably more Legends of the Fall than Interview with the Vampire that made everyone go swoon all over, because he's playing the the country guy, dirty so I thought like Interview with the Vampire I think is great. But I think once again, like as he's great in Interview with the Vampire, he does get overshadowed with Tom Cruise and Antonio Banderas at that point. But I mean, now I think Brad Pitt's kind of
right. And the debut of Kirsten Dunst.
And Kirsten Dunst, exactly. But like back then, I think everyone was more just focused on Tom Cruise. Like, oh my God, Tom Cruise is playing a villain. He's a sexy vampire. And then here's Brad Pitt, who's just kind of this kind of character. But yes, he comes out with 7 and 12 Monkeys. And that's what I was saying, like in terms of like not being the pretty boy, but still kind of having fun. 12 Monkeys, you could say he's having a blast with 12 Monkeys. And then I say he kind of goes through.
I want to say that's the first, like I said, that's our first glimpse of fun. Well, I mean, actually,
True
Romance is actually the first fun Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
it's the first one as like a major role.
And then he does kind of go back to, like I said, more prestigious and Pretty Boy with like Meet Joe Black and stuff. But then we get Fight Club,
which I really enjoy, but it does not need to be a 3-hour movie.
No, not at all. But then we start to get back to Fun Brad, where he's also like, hey, I want to be grimy and gritty with like Fight Club and Snatch, where he's like, I'm ripped as shit, but I'm not pretty either. Like, I want to be all bruised up and like just grungy looking, And then you mentioned this on the Julia Roberts episode, The Mexican, that you really liked him in.
Yeah, that's a very underrated movie, in my opinion.
But to me, one of my favorite performances of Brad is a special guest spot on Friends. Now, at the time, he was with Jennifer Aniston, and his performance in that, it's one of my favorite episodes because Brad just comes in and it's just like, y'all want to see me be funny again? Watch out, here I come. And his line, every line in that episode with him is perfect. And knowing that, you know, him and Jennifer Aniston are together and he hates her in that episode just made it that much better. And that's probably one of my favorite performances of his, just because he just lets it all out and just has fun. But yeah, like in terms of his movies, what I love most about Brad is he can either be the top guy or he could be a great number 2 or number 3 in a group. And what I mean by in a group, like look at the Oceans franchise. The Ocean franchise, he is not the number 1 guy in Oceans. That is George Clooney. You know, and then by the time we get to 12, 13, stuff like that, Matt Damon has kind of risen up, and Matt Damon's kind of right there. But he works beautifully in a group with these guys. And there are other films too where he's kind of, you know, in a group atmosphere where it's like, yeah, that's Brad Pitt, but he doesn't overshadow the rest of the group. He brings everyone in, and they're all working well together. And Glorious Bastards was another one. I was like, yes, Brad Pitt's there, but he really elevates everyone else in the Bastards to the point where it's not like, oh, it's Brad Pitt and these other guys. It's like, no, there's Brad Pitt, there's Eli Roth, and of course I'm blanking all the other Bastards names at the moment, but they are having their great moments. And it's not like, oh, Brad Pitt's here and everyone else is just kind of supporting him. It's like, no, they are all doing a great job. Brad Pitt knows where to play his lane. And then even when he does like pop up in like little snippets like Deadpool 2, he didn't have to do that. It was great. It was great seeing him in it. But like he can just pop in for like 2 seconds for a fun joke, like in Lost City this year. And he doesn't have to go like, hey, I'm Brad Pitt. I'm the star kind of thing. That's why I think we love Brad. Is like, and it's usually when he's funny, when he goes and does those things. Like, let me pop in, be funny for 2 seconds, and then back out. It wasn't Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Wasn't he a funny spot in that too? I can't remember.
He was one of the contestants on the dating game show.
Exactly. He's like kind of Matt Damon in a way where he's like, hey, let me just pop in real quick, just to be funny, and then you guys can go and, you know, do the rest of the movie. I don't want to overshadow it. But I enjoy the hell out of him for that kind of thing. So like I said, you mentioned how much you love The Mexican. I either never saw that or I don't remember.
Well, I mean, it's not a perfect movie. It's directed by Gore Verbinski. This is right before he did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. But obviously co-starred Julia Roberts. It's one of those movies like basically 2 big stars in this movie, and that was the big thing.
At that time, they were both
so they're both at the peak of their career, and it's kind of a rom-com / action adventure thing. It's almost kind of in that vein of like a Romancing the Stone or a Lost City or something like that. Although it's in this time, obviously in Mexico. Although actually the Mexican they're talking about is actually a gun, but that's what's called The Mexican. But it's a fun movie. It's got serious scenes to it. James Gandolfini is phenomenal in it as well. That's really good. But then, like you said, after you get into that next phase of his career, I think two of our favorite movies, at least of my favorite movies of his, come out with Troy, which, you know, that was one for the men and the women. I mean, that was
for everybody.
And then Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I think I might be the biggest fan of this movie because a lot of people like it. I love this movie.
I fucking love this movie.
I think first of all, the chemistry between him and Angelina is off the charts. And then the comedic banter and the way they mix the action and comedy is just a perfect blend.
There are so many moments in that film that I could just pull and just watch. There's the whole car chase scene where they're being chased in the interstate and they're talking and he's like, that wasn't your. I brought my parents to my wedding. I told you I saw him. And like, there's so many great moments. And then there's one moment that I personally love. It's in the third act when they're fighting in the like warehouse place, and he takes out a dude and he's so proud. He's dancing with the wrenches, and she looks at him like, what a fucking idiot. But granted, I mean, a lot of people, you know, that's where he kind of cheated on Jennifer Aniston with Angelina Jolie, and they got married and everything. But that movie, first off, my favorite Angelina Jolie film. She's amazing in that film. But Brad Pitt their chemistry is through the charts. But everyone is so great in that film. And of course, Troy. Why people hate on this fucking film, I it confuses Brian and I because we love Troy. Him as Achilles is a near perfect performance. I mean, first off, God himself sculpted to look like this character. He's got some of the best lines. We were just messing around with a bunch of guys doing trivia the other night, and they were doing a movie quote that no one else got. And we got, 3 words into the quote, and you and I both went, Troy, because it's Brad.
Thessalonian. Oh, Troy.
Yeah, it's totally Troy. It's like, and then we finished the quote without them actually finishing the quote because we knew it. And it's like, he's such an amazing character in that film. And hands down, one of my favorite battle sequences in a film is when he goes off against Hector, Eric Bana's Hector. That whole sequence where he knows he's in control and he's like hunting his prey, he's doing little skip jumps and stuff like that. I love that film so damn much. That's how Brian, Brian, I get it well. So I was like, 2 of our favorite Brad Pitt films are the same 2 films. So he did the Oceans, and then he did his serious stuff. Assassination of Jesse James, and I'm not going to say the rest of that fucking title. He's great in that film, but also, once again, that movie's almost 4 hours
so boring.
long.
So boring, too.
So
I've never
long.
rewatched it because I just couldn't bring myself to.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I still have never seen that movie because it's just so long. I just don't. Really
it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's Brad Pitt reuniting for a 3rd time with David Fincher, and plus you got this great supporting cast, with Cate Blanchett, and you got Mahershala Ali is in there now and other stuff, and it's like I don't love this movie. I think it's one of Fincher's weakest ones. It's a fine movie. It's too long. It's too slow. Honestly, if it's almost the exact same movie as Forrest Gump, if you go through step by step, but I won't go into that. But it's just a movie that it's weird because it got all the Oscar attention. I'm like, really? Of all the David Fincher movies, that's the one you picked to give Oscar nominations?
He does make some weird choices, which is why we haven't seen all of his movies, because he does do someone's like, I don't know if I can watch that one, Brad. But
especially in this kind of era we're talking about now, this is when we largely lost fun Brad Pitt. I mean, he was starting a lot of.
You did have Burn After Reading. You did have Burn After Reading in there, which I'm not a fan of the Coens, but I like Brad Pitt's performance in that. I think everyone remembers his little dance in it, but then he gets cut short halfway through the film, and that's the thing that I remember about Burn After Reading. It was that I enjoyed it till this point when Brad gets taken out of the film, and then I didn't care for the movie after that. Brad was the reason why I checked out this film. Brad was the reason why I dealt with this film, and then as soon as his character is out of the film, I'm done. You lost me out of that movie. Brad was the whole reason why I gave a shit about that film. But yes, we kind of got this. Brad is trying to search for an Oscar kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And now, granted, he's working with a lot of great directors. He's making good movies. I'm not saying to make good movies. I mean, you get coming out with 12 Years a Slave and Fury and Moneyball. But,
I loved Fury. I thought Fury was.
That's what I'm saying. These are all good movies, but we went a long span without for me, my favorite fun Brad Pitt.
Well, during that time, because you kind of jumped over some. I mean, I thought he was great in Moneyball. Megamind. He had no business being as good as he was in Megamind. You're not as huge a fan of Megamind as I am.
Megamind is actually a fun movie. My problem with Brad Pitt when he does animated voices, both in Sinbad, which is not as good of a movie, but also Megamind, is his voice. It's very generic. Isn't that special of a voice? Like if he was not a celebrity, they would never use his voice for a character in an animated movie because it just sounds like some dude just reading lines.
It is a very generic, and I'm not saying that because if you see Brad Pitt's face,
it's not a bad thing. It's just some people don't have the voices that translate.
Yeah, you hide Brad Pitt behind an animated voice. You're like, if you hadn't told me that was Brad Pitt, I probably wouldn't have figured out that was Brad Pitt. And the same thing. This movie's coming out at the end of the month. Superhero Pets.
League of Superhero Pets. Yeah.
John Krasinski plays Superman in that. I've seen that trailer 8 times in the past 2 days because of TV. I barely can hear Krasinski. It's not because he's doing a voice. It's because Krasinski. It's like if you see Krasinski, that's his voice. You put him behind an animated character. It's like, is that Krasinski? Oh, okay. I guess I can hear some inflection there. I guess it is. But same thing goes with Brad and Megamind. You could have put anyone that performed in that role. Brad's great in it. He's great in it, but his voice is very. If you don't see his face, you could probably excuse it as not being Brad Pitt. But then, of course, he also did Inglourious Bastards at that same time, which I love. Inglourious Bastards. Brad Pitt is a great part in that film, but it's Christoph Waltz and it's the ensemble cast of that movie that makes that movie great.
And my problem with Brad Pitt
was
in
the
that
driving
movie.
force of the marketing to that film. It was Brad Pitt's face in
Yeah,
front of the
you thought the movie would actually be about the bastards, and they're in
Yeah.
like half an hour of the movie tops.
He's
But my
great
problem
in
with
it.
Brad Pitt in that movie is he plays it so cartoony, and I really think that's just it felt like somebody reading Tarantino dialogue. It didn't feel natural to me. It didn't. So Inglourious Basterds, his role in that didn't work for me. But I still think it's a fine movie.
Now, like I said, I loved Fury. I thought Fury was
Mhm.
one of those movies. It was like it came out. I was like, okay, Brad's just doing a war movie to do a war movie. You're like, oh no, this movie's actually really, really good. But then there's a one movie that I think everyone shit on before it came out because it was in production hell for like ever, and then it came out. You're like, crap, that was actually really good. Which was World War Z. That movie had no business being as good as it was, and we're still waiting for the sequel, which Brad's supposed to come back and do.
It's not coming.
Well, I mean, let's see how long it took World War Z to come out. Of course, the sequel is going to be just as.
Look, they reshot the entire last.
They did. They reshot like the whole freaking film.
But then, yeah, David Fincher was going to do World War Z with Brad Pitt, and then he was off of it, and now Brad's not even sure if he's doing it anymore. And I will be shocked if they ever make it. But I mean, I have hope because I would like to see it, but I don't think we will.
Like I said, it was better than it had any right to be. Yeah. And that's a movie that I think a lot of people consider an underrated Brad Pitt film, which it is because everyone hated it before it came out, and then it actually was really solid. Like I said, and then he once again got stuck in his like I'm trying to win an Oscar phase again. Like I said, he did pop up in Deadpool 2 for that split second, which was
literally a split second.
Hilarious. It was hilarious. Ad Astra put me to sleep. In the theater, it put me to sleep.
I love Brad Pitt, and I didn't even bother seeing Ad Astra because the trailer put me to sleep.
It's not his performance. His performance is fine. That movie is just a droll to get through. But then we got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I don't love the movie, but I love Brad and Leo in the movie. And we've talked about this during the Tarantino show, is that if the movie had just been about Brad and Leo's characters and not trying to bring in the Sharon Tate of it all and trying to misdirect us and everything, then I think the movie probably would have been a lot better than what it actually was. But Leo and Brad were both great in that film. Like I said, I love the hell out of Brad in that movie. I really, really do.
Especially when he gets to beat the hell out of Bruce Lee.
Exactly. When he picks him up and just slams his ass into the car door.
Who cars that? Oh.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that. And honestly, we haven't really outside of, like I said, Lost Cities is like not much at all, but we haven't had anything since Bullet Train coming out here in the next couple of weeks. He's kind of taking a break in a way. Now I say a break.
There's a
I think it's more because of
La La
COVID.
Land. Damien Chazelle, who directed La La Land, he's got Babylon coming out supposedly Christmas time this year, and he's one of the main people in that. And then apparently he's signed up for a whole bunch of other stuff, but nothing. I don't think we filmed yet.
I think he just kind of took a break when COVID and stuff hit. Like he just didn't. He just took a backseat to everything. Which one movie I had always wanted to see and I never got to see because I think everyone was just like it was okay, it wasn't great. Was Allied or a Lead? Was it Allied or a Lead?
It's Allied.
I remember the trailer of that made it seem like it was amazing, but everyone just told me it was like it's eh.
Well, I was excited to see it because Robert Zemeckis, who made some great films back with things like Forrest Gump and with Back to the Future movies, like this, great director of like the 80s and early 90s, he fell into this thing where he was just obsessed with mocap. He started making Beowulf, and he made Christmas Carol, and he made Polar Express, and they're like, just please, would you just let mocap die? And so he came back to this. Actually, I think he did Flight first, and then this, and we're like, okay, he's making real movies again. You got Brad Pitt, I love it. It's got Marianne Cotillard, who I like. It's honestly kind of a snoozer.
If you watch the trailer, though, the trailer is interesting as hell.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching that trailer going, this looks really, really good. And then it came out, and I hadn't got to see it, and everyone was like, yeah, it's boring. It's really not that great. I was like, oh, I actually really want to see that movie. But yeah, Bullet Train. Now, granted, you and I feel like the trailers have kind of ruined the film.
If you have not, trailer 1 is fine. If you have not watched trailer 2, great. Do not. Because I haven't seen the movie, obviously, but I'm pretty sure it gave away the entire movie.
It did. It was one of those where it's like you and I try to avoid them, but then I think we both. I saw it in the theater, the second trailer. I was like, fuck, because I feel like I watched the whole film, and I remember I was like, I think I was in the theater, and you were texting me about. I think you went to sell the same movie, but we obviously we don't live near each other. You're in Illinois, I'm in Louisiana, but you got out of your film first. And I think I sent you a text right after that trailer. I was like, dude, I think they literally just gave away the end of Bullet Train. You go, are you talking about that one scene? I go, yeah. I go, yep. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the fucking final scene of that film. I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we saw the final scene. I'm pretty sure we saw some major twists. So
they gave away the whole plot in that movie.
I mean,
Granted,
I still think it will be amazing because David Leitch is my favorite director working today as far as action. So it'll be a ton of fun. But I'm still just mad about that trailer.
I've done everything I can to try and pretend I have not seen that trailer. I can't get that last shot out of my head, but I, for the most part, feel like I've gotten most of that trailer out of my brain. Now, granted, as soon as we hit the movie, I'm going to go, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. But Bullet Train just looks like it's so much fun. And that's why we're so excited, which is why we were going to talk about Brad Pitt eventually. But that's why we need to talk about him now before Bullet Train came out, because we saw that first trailer. Now, you had been excited about the movie before the trailer came out.
I had been excited about it based on just the director and then the cast, because not only it's another one of those great ensembles that Brad Pitt likes to make himself a part of. Because I mean, besides Brad, you got Sandra Bullock's in kind of a small role. You got Aaron Taylor Johnson. You got I forget the guy's name who was in
Brian Tyree Henry.
Brian Tyree Henry, thank you.
Karen Fukunaga, who you now appreciate better after watching The Boys, but I've loved her for a while. But
yeah, this list goes on and on. It's got a great cast.
It's such a great cast. And then that first trailer came out. This is the first time in a long time that Brian was like, saw the trailer, go, I'm so excited. Instead of going, that trailer made me not really want to see it anymore. This is the first time we were like, yes, this trailer's everything I hoped for.
I also just love the tone of the trailer. It starts off, playing the Bee Gees, but in Japanese. I'm like, I love this.
Yeah, it looks so good. I cannot wait to see this movie on August. It comes out on the 5th, but let's face it, you and I are going to see it.
4th, of course.
4th, yeah. But yeah, Brad Pitt, he can do everything.
It's one of my all-time favorites. So.
Oh, I guess if you count World War Z now, he has, and I guess technically 7. He has done everything. I don't think there's something he hasn't done yet.
Musical. I don't think he can. He doesn't strike me as a singer though.
Happy Feet 2. He's in Happy Feet 2. That's a musical.
Well, okay. I guess.
I'm just saying.
Technically speaking, and he has a dance scene in Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
He does. That's a very sexy.
But yeah, but he's somebody who he's really has kind of dabbled in every genre.
I think
he
likes
to work with pretty much all kinds of different directors. So yeah.
Part of me keeps wondering who hasn't he worked with yet that I would love to see him work with. Now, obviously, there's some younger actors and actresses that have just gotten into the fold. They're like, oh, I love to see, but I'm talking about like current people that have been around as long as he has. Has he ever been with Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks? I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, I guess that would be the next one. I would love to see Brad Pitt and Tom Hanks in a movie together. I'm trying to think of anyone else that's like huge that him and Brad have not been together with. Tom Hanks, I guess, would be the number one. And, I don't think he's been with Harrison Ford, but let's face it, we're probably not going to see Harrison Ford anymore.
No, he was with Harrison Ford in The Devil's Own.
That's right, The Devil's Own, which I don't remember that film that much. So
it wasn't a terrible movie. It was one of those movies that was basically sold on just their two names. And it was kind of if anyone else was in it, it would just be, people wouldn't even care about it. It's a throwaway, political thriller. But the fact that they're in it, at least made people interested. And I watched it for that reason.
I honestly wouldn't mind seeing another film with him and Tom Cruise today, with like an action film like that with those two together. Because obviously we've seen them as like the dramatized, sexualized vampires. It's like these guys both are pretty awesome. They were awesome then, but they're pretty awesome. I'd love to actually see Tom today with Brad Pitt today and do something like a
Mission Impossible film. Make him a villain.
Exactly, make it a Mission Impossible film or like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith kind of thing. Like let them just go out there and just do action shit.
Put Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt in like a This Means War kind of film.
Do a spy versus spy.
Yeah, there you
go. Mad
go.
TV spy versus spy with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. I want
better
that.
Yet, but just make Bullet Train 2 and have Tom Cruise be in it.
I'd be for that as well. So for you, if you were going to, and this is going to be hard, if you were going to pick 3 Brad Pitt films, though, I think this is about the second hardest one since Tom Cruise. Which 3? I'm still trying to figure out my brain which third film.
That's where you have me go first. I see how it is.
That's 100%. You know my motive.
Yeah. So I think for me, I think 7 is definitely one, because I mean I love Fight Club. I love Fight Club. Um, Also with Fincher, obviously, but I didn't want to pick 2 Fincher movies, and I think 7 is the one where he really broke out as a serious actor. I think again, it's one where he kind of gets to show a lot of emotion. He gets to do a little bit of everything. There's a little action to it, a little drama. There's even some kind of dry humor throughout the movie. I really kind of like the way they worked it in there, and it's one of his best movies, because 7 is a 5-star movie for me. The second one I picked Moneyball, which I'm not.
I didn't think you would pick
Well,
that.
I'm not picking necessarily my favorite movies from him. I'm picking the movies I think that people should see that best represent Brad Pitt, and this is one where, he plays these characters in 7 and Fight Club, and he plays like these outlandish characters in Bullet Train and all these different things like this. Moneyball is one of those movies where he's just playing a normal guy. He just plays a normal guy. But even within that, I think thanks largely to the script by Aaron Sorkin, he really does imbue a lot of personality to it. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of educational, because like for somebody who like me, who I've watched baseball here and there, but I'm not really into sports. So to see this whole statistical side to it and this approach to it, it really made me fascinated about something that I don't have that much interest in. And I think a large part of that is Brad Pitt. I think he did a great job in the role of this guy who is trying to do this. And for my third one, I struggled with a few of them. I settled on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because that is the one, because I have 7, I have serious Brad Pitt, I have Moneyball, which is mainly kind of a drama, a serious guy, and Smith, because I wanted to pick one that's just pure fun. And for me, this is his most fun film, at least so far.
We've got 2. This was so hard. Now, first off, yes, absolutely.
I had like 4 others I considered. So yeah.
Oh yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 100%. It is definitely one of mine, because like I said, I love that movie so damn much. I mean, the action is great, the humor is great, the chemistry between the 2 leads is great, but also the cast around them. Vince Vaughn is hilarious in that movie.
Adam Brody wearing a Fight Club shirt.
Adam Brody, yes, breaking meta. Even the girls with Angelina Jolie. Was it Kerry Washington and
Michelle Monaghan is one of them.
Michelle Monaghan and what's her name from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and House. It's a great cast. Jennifer Morrison. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's a great cast all the way through, and it has a great story, and it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's rewatchable like crazy.
Oh yeah.
So 100% that movie. My number 2. Fuck, trying to find a movie that you're trying to just be prestigious about. Fucking Troy. Are you kidding me? This is for Brad fucking Pitt. You got a guy who literally his first, for the most part, lines is like, "Oh, I would be afraid if I had to go get some." That is why no one will remember your name. That is put your dick on the table and then go out and do what he does right after that. Brad Pitt's a god at that point. There's even that speech when they're about to rush into the field where everyone else is like, no, let's stay back. He's like, no, screw that. I'm Achilles. I'm going through. And he's talking to the group. He's like, we are lions. Take it. It's yours. Like that whole line is just like, fucking love Brad Pitt in that movie so damn much. Everything about that movie I love. There are certain characters that could be done better, but that movie, if you don't watch that movie going, A, for girls, I want to fuck Brad Pitt, or I guess guys too, but 2, going, I want to be as fucking cool as Brad Pitt is in that movie and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, then I don't know what more I can do to prove to you that Brad Pitt's fucking awesome. Now, when it goes to his third film, I mean, I've ran through like Oceans, Interview with a Vampire, Fury. There's all these movies I want to pick. Moneyball was up there too. Because I
want to see if you landed on my runner-up. Go ahead.
What's that?
I want to see if you landed on my runner-up. No,
because it's the other movie you picked, which is 7.
Oh, okay.
Do I love 7 as much as Brian? No. But 7 is one of those movies, and while granted, yes, Legends of the Fall, Interview with a Vampire came out prior to that, 7, like what Brian said, 7 was that movie that showed Brad Pitt can be this top tier actor. He basically has to act side by side with one of the best actors in Hollywood history, with Morgan Freeman. And granted, everyone doesn't want to talk about Kevin Spacey anymore, but we will, because we look at the performances. That whole final scene where you're watching every range of emotion that Brad has to go through at that point, and then eventually where the end point is of that film, Brad Pitt kills this. And it's a grounded role for him. He's not the flamboyant, sexy movie star, and he's not this action star. He's just this detective who's kind of clumsy and who's kind of still learning. And you have this veteran detective in Morgan Freeman, and they're trying to solve the serial killer case. And it's an incredibly well done film. I am not a fan of Fight Club. I should have picked Fight Club because Fight Club's Fight Club. But if I have to choose to be watching Fight Club or watch Seven, I will watch Seven 1,000 times before I will watch Fight Club, because Fight Club's just like, let's just be weird and crazy and just try to throw, weird shit in just to do that. Where Seven to me is a beautifully crafted mystery thriller with an ending that will make you all remember what's in the box. Everyone remembers that. And it's one of those movies too where it's like, oh my God, they actually did that kind of thing. And Brad Pitt's performance is, like I said, elevated him to that next echelon of Hollywood. And so that's why I would pick Seven. Like I said, and Troy is just Brad Pitt at his most badass. And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is just.
I will say my honorable mention, I'm going to give this one, is a movie that I don't actually love. I think it's just okay, and that's Snatch. Because Brad Pitt is the best part of that movie. He does a role where you can't even tell what he's saying. And he's about that movie. Yeah.
Yes. And he is great in Snatch, but I just Snatch is, to me. Snatch
not for the movie. I would not say it for the movie, but I'm just saying for Brad Pitt.
The Brad Pitt's performance in Snatch is fantastic. But Snatch is one of those movies where everyone talked about that movie for so damn long, and I finally watched it. I was like, it's fine for what it is. Brad Pitt's great in it, but I mean it's fine. But I mean, we could keep picking Brad Pitt movies and Brad, like I said, Fury, Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he actually won an Oscar for it. There's so many great Brad Pitt movies that we could pick, but those are our top three for that. Like I said, we got an actor that is beloved for the most part by everyone. We got a director that is growing more and more by the day, and starting to do everything that people love to do or love to watch. And then we got an actress that everyone has seen that really need to take more respect on, and Hollywood needs to take more risks with. But nonetheless, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Actor, Actress, Director Showcase. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, get the follows on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, what is our next episode? The Movie Crusaders chat about? I want to say it is.
I think so.
I'm trying to think. Like I said, we
I don't keep track of the schedule. I just show up and
I have the schedule up here. So. It is yes. It is the Movie Crusaders chat about MCU Phase 4 so far. Now that Ms. Marvel has ended and Thor: Love and Thunder has come out, there has been I think someone posted a thing going, Marvel Phase 4 and Phase 2 are both like 12 and a half hours long. Marvel Phase 3 is like 24 hours long. And then like Marvel Phase 4 with TV shows is like 50 hours long. So
that's with all the TV shows of like
with all the TV shows and everything, it's like about 50 hours long. So we're gonna discuss Marvel Phase 4, how we're feeling about it so far, where we think it might go, basically all that kind of stuff. In terms of movies, the one thing that came out this week was it Paws of Fury and Where the Crawdads Sing, which
and Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris.
Yeah, I'm not going to see Mrs. Harris Goes to
Paris. And in limited release, The Gray Man.
The Gray Man, but we're going to talk about Gray Man next week when it comes out on Netflix. And then I think also Sea Beasts on Netflix came out this week as well. But yes, The Gray Man came out in select theaters this week. Brian, it looks like Brian and I are probably going to wait and watch that next week. So there'll definitely be a review for Gray Man next week. If I see any of these other films, I might put a review up for them. But everything's kind of lining up for Bullet Train on August 5th. That's the next big film.
Well, there's Nope next week.
Oh yes, Nope. Nope is next week as well. We would definitely have a review for Nope. But yeah, that's what's coming down the pipe for us here on the channel. So we hope you guys stay tuned and check out all that. And like I said, if you guys were fans of Thor: Love and Thunder, or you guys want to know our thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder, we have a non-spoiler and a spoiler review on the channel as well. But like always, we are the Movie Crusaders. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.